Perfect. Well, good morning again, everyone, and welcome to our utility providers and the Clean Building Performance Standard webinar. Glad you're here. This is a wonderful informational webinar that we've put together specifically for our utility providers throughout the state of Washington. It's amazing that the role that utility providers play in supporting their customers with the clean building performance standards. And we're going to walk through not only what the performance standards are for those that may not be aware, but then also the integral role that utility providers play. We also have Ariel, as well as I believe Jessica from the Department of Revenue here with us today, that will also speak in regards to that piece of it and how that all plays together as well. As I mentioned before, these meetings or this webinar is recorded, and we'll post this on our website as well as share it out to everyone afterwards. With that, we'll get started. So there we go. Commerce, Department of Commerce, one of our most robust agencies within the state of Washington, where we reach just about every corner of the state, from housing and homelessness, community services, small business assistance, and then of course we are here in energy. And then within the energy division, you have your buildings performance staff led by our managing director, Emily Salzberg. And then within the clean buildings team, we have our teams that support the building performance standards. Starting on your left with our incentives team led by Josette, Derek, Brittany, and Sam, all of which are here with us today, and you'll be hearing from Josette later on today in this presentation. Our data team is led by KJ along with Michael, and our technical assistance team is Luke, Judy, Donnie, and James. These are the folks that really can get down into the weeds of the performance standards and get those highly technical questions. Our programming team is led by Anna Lynn, who you'll also hear from today as well, along with myself, Dylan, and Robert. Today's agenda is pretty straightforward, just a quick overview of the performance standards, and then we'll dive into the utility provider's role within the performance standards and then the incentive program. As I mentioned earlier, we'll get to hear from the Department of Revenue and explain the numerous support and resource opportunities that are available to you, as well as others going through the Clean Building Performance Standard compliance pathways. And of course, we're going to leave as much time as we can for your questions and to answer your questions as well, or answer those questions. For those throughout the presentation, you're welcome to put those in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, or when we get to the Q&A piece, then we can answer them live. All right, but first we're going to take a step back and just briefly talk about how we got here as a state. So as you can see in the chart on your screen, buildings have a really profound impact on our environment, and the state felt that it's in its interest to maximize the full potential of energy efficiency standards, incentives, programs, and codes to keep energy costs low and meet our greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. You can see in this chart that greenhouse gas emissions from buildings alone is the second leadest polluter, right behind transportation. And even though this graph stats from 2015, I know we've made some strides in that, but it is still up there enough that we continue to make these efforts to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions. Now, as a result of those statistics, created the Clean Buildings Law, which was authorized in House Bill 1257 in the 2019 legislation session. It was based on the ASHRAE Standard 100, which covers energy efficiency in existing buildings. And you can see the reference up here on your screen. And We developed amendments to Standard 100 to conform with the clean buildings legislation, which you can also see in your screen under WEC 9450. Originally, the clean buildings law categorized tier 1 buildings, which are buildings over 50,000 square feet, excluding parking garages. And then later on, the law was expanded to include what we know as tier 2 buildings, which are buildings between 20,000 and 50,000 square feet, as well as multifamily buildings over 20,000 square feet. And you're going to hear the tier 1 and tier 2 building side by side frequently throughout this presentation. During this time, Commerce was charged with tasks such as rulemaking, notifying building owners, administering incentives, and supporting mandatory compliance. Here's just a quick map of the phases we've gone through since 2019 when House Bill 1257 was first brought forward, all the way to here more recently this year, where we're currently have agency request legislation, House Bill 1543, which is proposed to give us alternative metrics and extensions for reporting. Now to just jump in real quick to the performance standards, and I just want to again preface this that this is a very high level overview. If there are some of the questions that dive into those technical weeds a little bit more, we may be coming back to those or looping back with you offline here, but just to keep it high level. Tier 1 building. Here is the legal legislative definition of a Tier 1 building. Where some non-residential hotel, motel, and dormitory floors exceed 50,000 square feet. Basically, the buildings over 50,000 square feet minus parking garages is a tier 1 building. And you can see here the number of tier 1 buildings throughout the state broken down by county. And this information, of course, is on our website as well. So if you want to go back and look at that, and maybe your county specifically, certainly welcome to do so. Tier 2 buildings, again, definition up on the screen here. I'll just summarize it as buildings between 20,000 and 50,000 square feet minus parking garages. And tier 2 buildings also include multifamily buildings over 20,000 square feet. All right, basic requirements for the Clean Building Performance Standards. First of all, benchmarking. Benchmarking is collecting the energy use data of the building over the course of at least 12 months. And you'll see later on that this is one of the big roles that utility providers can help support their customers in. The other basic requirements for building owners to comply with the building performance standards is developing an operation and maintenance program and an energy management plan. Both of these are living, breathing documents that they develop as part of their compliance. And then for tier 1 basic requirements, it is meeting a performance metric, either through the EUIT or investment criteria. Now note that tier 2 buildings do not have to meet that performance metric. So that's one of the big comparisons. Compliance schedule. So our tier 1 buildings are broken out into 3 different cohorts, which you see on the screen there in blue. Our largest tier 1 buildings of 220,000 square feet or more have a compliance date coming up in June 1st, 2026. And then a year later, our second cohort of tier 1 buildings of 90 to 220,000 square feet. And then finally, our third cohort is 50 to 90,000 square feet in June 2028. Tier 2 buildings have a compliance date July 1st, 2027. And those buildings will be released, notifications being released in June 2025. So here, just a few months. Quick side-by-side comparison of what I just went over. Again, big differences between the two: building size, compliance dates, and that tier 1 buildings have a performance metric to meet. Now, there are some exemptions with built into the performance standards. You can see the list of the exemptions here on your screen. These are the ones that, like I said, are written into the standard. Probably more common ones that we see right now is in regards to the occupancy, being less than 50% occupancy, as well as agricultural buildings. So the thing that we stress to building owners is that even though they may have a building that's on this exemption list, they still need to access the Clean Buildings portal and apply for that exemption. Now, the exemption timeframe for Tier 1 buildings, they can apply for exemptions no sooner than 3 years prior to the compliance date and no later than 180 days to the compliance date. Tier 2 is 2 years prior to the compliance date and 180 days, I'm sorry, 2 years prior to the compliance date and no later than 180 days prior to the compliance date. And then these exemption certificates are good for the 5-year cycle. There are penalties for non-compliance. You can see here how they break down depending on the size of your building. Tier 1 buildings have an upfront $5,000 penalty plus up to $1.50 square foot penalty. So a building of 75,000 square feet with that 5,000 upfront plus $1.50 square foot can be in excess of 117,000. So it can be up there. Tier 2 buildings, 30 cents a square foot. So on the high end, 15,000, low end, $6,000. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that it's not our goal to charge penalties. We want buildings to be energy efficient. And so we will work with building owners as much as we can to help guide them and bring them into compliance with the performance standards and avoid penalties. Okay. Quickly, the utility provider's role. So there are a couple RCWs to keep in mind here. First one here requires utility providers to provide energy consumption data to the building owners upon request. Okay. Now, depending on if the utility provider is a large utility serving over 25,000 customers, that data is downloaded into the Energy Start Portfolio Manager. Okay. Smaller utilities, that information can be provided via an Excel sheet that's within the Energy Start Portfolio specifications. The other RCW to keep in mind is this one right here, which requires qualifying utilities with over 25,000 customers to participate in the incentive program. And the incentive program actually leads us to our next topic, and I'm going to turn this over to Josette who will explain the incentive program in more detail. So Josette.
Thanks, Jeff. That's a great introduction to the standard. Hi, everyone. My name is Josette Gates, and I'm the lead of the Clean Buildings Incentive Team here at the Department of Commerce. Our team is small but impactful, consisting of 4 members, including myself. We manage various programs, such as the Early Adopter Incentive Programs, the Clean Buildings Performance Grants, and the audits for public buildings. Before joining Commerce, I worked in the private sector within the factory engineering field across several states. But today I'm going to talk with you a little bit about the Clean Buildings Early Adopter Incentive Programs. These programs are managed by the Department of Commerce and our team in collaboration with participating utilities and the Department of Revenue. Next slide. So there are 2 main programs within the Clean Buildings Early Adopter Incentives, Tier 1 and Tier 2. In both programs, utility providers pay incentives directly to building owners who comply with the Clean Building Performance Standard. However, utilities are not involved in the building retrofit projects or the measurement and verification processes for these projects. That responsibility falls up to Commerce. The Tier 1 program is currently available and serves the largest buildings in the state. It has a funding allocation of $75 million for the utility tax credits that support the program. The incentives for Tier 1 buildings can be substantial as they help cover the cost of energy efficient building retrofits. The amount of the Tier 1 incentives is calculated by Commerce at $2 per square foot, plus an additional 5 cents per kBTU saved beyond the specified baseline. Presently, the Tier 1 program has a low volume of applications, leading to a lower requirement for utility participation at this time. But we hope that will turn around. Tier 2, on the other hand, this program is not available yet, but it's scheduled to launch in July of 2025. With a funding allocation of $150 million for the utility tax credits. We anticipate awarding approximately 15,000 incentives to Tier 2 building owners throughout the program's duration. Commerce will calculate the Tier 2 incentives at 30 cents per square foot. Okay, next slide. So, you may be wondering which utilities are required to make incentive payments to building owners. According to the law, these are referred to as qualified utilities. RCW 19.27A.140 defines qualifying utilities as either customer-owned or investor-owned gas or electric utilities that serve more than 25,000 customers in the state of Washington. This slide shows a list of the state's utilities that meet this criteria. If you represent a qualifying utility, Commerce will need to establish your primary contact as a utility incentive application approver in the Clean Buildings portal. Please note that no contracting with Commerce is required for this process. Next slide, please. If your utility serves fewer than 25,000 customers in Washington, you can still participate in the incentive programs to help your customers save energy. To opt in, please email us at the address provided on this slide. Next slide, please. This slide outlines the main requirements for the Tier 1 early adopter incentive programs for buildings. To qualify, buildings must meet the following criteria. They need to be 50,000 square feet in size or greater. The building baseline weather normalized energy use intensity must be must exceed its target by 15 EUI. Buildings must be served by at least one electrical utility, gas or thermal energy company participating in the incentive program. And finally, they must have the ability to meet the building's energy use intensity target. We call that the EUIT, and comply with the Clean Building Standard. Next slide. This slide explains how a Tier 1 early adopter incentive is converted into a payment for the building owner. So on the left side of the slide, you'll see the first step is Commerce calculates the incentive amount based on an approved application submitted by the building. Next, the utilities serving the building log into the Clean Buildings portal to review and either approve or deny the payment. After that, the building will complete its energy saving retrofit construction, whatever that may be, it varies, and then go through a measurement and verification period. Finally, once the building has an approved compliance application, Commerce will notify the utility to proceed with the incentive payments. The utility processes that payment and claims a tax credit for it. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now we're going to look at Tier 2. Tier 2 is going to be a larger program that will be kicking off here in July. So this slide just kind of talks about what kind of buildings are going to be eligible for that. So to qualify, the buildings must be 20,000 square foot in size. They need to be served by at least one electric utility or gas or thermal energy company that participates in this program, in the incentive program. Additionally, buildings must comply with the program standards by implementing both an operation and maintenance program and an energy management. Next slide. So similar to Tier 1, this slide illustrates how a Tier 2 incentive is converted into a payment to a building owner. So the first step in the process, you can see on the left, is Commerce calculates the incentive amount based on an approved compliance application submitted by the building. Subsequently, the utility serving that building logs into the Clean Buildings portal to review and either approve or deny the payment. Once approved, the utility processes the payment and claims the tax credit. Commerce is working to keep the Tier 2 program simple and easy to administer because over the program's lifespan, approximately 15,000 incentives are expected to be paid out. And for the Tier 2 program, we're estimating incentive awards to be in the range of 6,000 to 15,000 per building. So it's a bigger program. Next slide. So, Clean Buildings portal. Accessing the Clean Buildings portal to review and either approve or deny the incentive payments is a straightforward process. First, you need to email Commerce with your utility's main point of contact, including, the name, job title, and email address for the person. After that, you can go in and create a SAW account and log into the Clean Buildings portal by adding the Clean Buildings portal as a new service. And then you'll be able to log in. You'll see on the slide, on the right-hand side of the slide, it's kind of the first screen you'll see when you log in. Okay, next slide. The Clean Buildings portal will notify you by email when your utility needs to go in and approve an incentive payment. So that's kind of nice. This slide just kind of shows the way the screen will look when you go in there, and this will have a list of incentives for your utility to review. Next slide. Okay, this slide displays the incentive calculation screen. So once you get into the portal, you find your list and you click on an incentive that needs to be approved, you're gonna see this screen. And I apologize, there's a lot on here, but I'll describe it here coming up. So it's important to note that utilities are not responsible for calculating the incentives in any way. That responsibility falls on Commerce. So you'll see in the screen, there are some fields where you can kind of see some of the calculation elements, but the only thing the utilities need to worry about is looking at the Commerce approved amount column that is specific to your utility. So in many cases, multiple utilities may serve a single building, which means that more than one utility can provide incentive payments to the building owner. So for instance, one utility may supply electricity while another provides natural gas. This affects how incentives are determined in the Tier 1 and in the Tier 2 incentive programs. So just thinking back to Tier 1, so that's certainly the biggest buildings in the state, and they're doing retrofits to their building. So Tier 1, those incentives are calculated based on the savings associated with those retrofits and then by fuel type. So you can kind of see on this slide, I know it's small, if PUD1 supplies electricity, the incentive payment for that utility is based on electricity savings from the retrofit project. Thus, the PUD1 is responsible for that incentive payment to the building owner. Conversely, the gas utility's incentive payment is based on the gas savings achieved by the retrofit project, meaning the gas utility covers that portion of the payment. So that's for Tier 1. Tier 2 operates a little differently, as it doesn't require those retrofit construction projects. So instead, it allocates incentives per the utilities, if there's one or more than one, based on the building's usage ratio at the time that they meet compliance with the standard, or at the time that they submit their compliance application to Commerce. So, for example, if two utilities serve a building, it's a Tier 2 building, each utility pays an incentive based on its respective share of energy consumption measured in kBTUs. So this means one utility could be paying more than the other utility, just depending on energy savings and usage. So next slide, please. So this slide indicates how utilities can enter their response to the incentive amount that Commerce has already calculated. So there are two response options: approved or tax credit not available. And you can kind of see it on the slide with the drop-down menu. Qualifying utilities are not required to administer incentive payments for which they are not eligible to receive a tax credit for that payment. However, they can approve a partial payment and enter that lower amount in the portal to match their tax credits available. Next slide. Okay, so to complete the process, the utility should enter the amount of incentive they are able to pay in the utility approved amount column. So you can see that on the slide on the lower right-hand side. Please note that a partial payment can be applied and approved, so a lower amount can be entered in this field. So once you filled in this information in this box, you're finished. Simply navigate away from this page and your approval will be saved in the portal. Next slide. So in conclusion, we hope this information helps you kind of better understand how these incentive programs work and how they're going to help building owners tackle compliance and eventually save money because they're going to be saving energy and they're going to be saving money in the long run. So please, to assist your customers, ensure you're providing good energy consumption data to them. This will help them kind of facilitate their benchmarking as they get started with the process and with compliance. And it will really help them identify areas where they can improve their buildings. If you are a qualified utility, please contact us to ensure that your main contact is set up and up to date because a lot of people are moving around these days. So just make sure you know who that person's going to be that's going to go into the portal and improve incentive payments. And they need to be set up as an incentive utility application approver in the Clean Buildings portal. Additionally, for utilities serving less than 25,000 customers, we encourage you to opt into the program. There's always a large building here or there in the rural parts of our state that could take advantage of these incentives, so we don't want them to miss out. The process for approving those incentive payments in the Clean Buildings portal is pretty straightforward, and we're really working hard to make sure it works well and is simple, especially in preparation for that security program. So thanks, everybody. Next slide.
Thanks, Josette. And this is where we'll turn it over to Ariel to walk us through the Department of Revenue's portion in this. So Ariel, I'm happy to run the slides for you. If you just give me a cue and you're all set.
All righty. Well, give me a moment to get a bit more situated on my side. All right. Hi, I'm Ariel Murphy, and I'm here with Jessica Clark, and I'll be explaining the process for the Energy Efficiency Incentive Public Utility Tax Credit administered from Department of Revenue. All right, next slide. So light and power businesses and gas distribution businesses can earn a credit for participating in this program. RCW 8216010, Section 2 and 4 defines these businesses. So a light and power business is defined as a business of operating a plant or system for the generation, production, or distribution of electrical energy for hire or sell, and or for the wheeling of electricities for other. Gas distribution business is defined as the business of operating a plant or system for the production or distribution or hire or sell of gas, whether manufactured or natural. The credit is earned after the incentive payments are made and are approved by Department of Commerce. The credits are equal to 100% of the incentive payments made, plus up to 8% of the documented administrative costs incurred. The credit will be calculated when filing the combined excise tax return for the period in which the incentive payments were made. The credit is calculated using a credit worksheet within this excise tax return, and we'll go over some examples of what that will look like later in the presentation. The credit can only be used to offset the public utility taxes owed, and RCW 8216185 establishes the credit. Refunds will not be granted in the place of the credit, and this program will expire June 30th, 2032. All right. So to claim the credit, first, Department of Commerce will notify the utility companies that a building within their jurisdiction qualifies for the incentive payment and will provide that total amount due to the building owner. Department of Commerce will notify Department of Revenue about the approval of the incentive payments. The utility companies will remit the payment to the building owner and then will file or fill out the credit worksheet in their combined excise tax return in the period in which the incentive payments were made in order to claim the credit. The credit can be applied to the public utility taxes on that return, and any unused credit can be used through the calendar year or anytime during the following 2 calendar years. Next slide. All right, so to complete that worksheet in the combined excise tax return, you only have to complete fields 1, 2, and 8. The other fields will automatically calculate for you. For this example, and for just be aware, all the numbers were just randomly entered, so there's no logic behind them. We have entered an incentive payment of $50,000 with administrative cost of $5,000. Because the administrative costs are limited to 8% of the incentive payment, the allowable administrative costs are calculated at $4,000. The following field will automatically calculate for you, and this will give you a total allowable credit of $54,000. Based on the PUT taxes or public utility taxes calculated on the return, only $10,000 can be claimed on this return, and this leaves a credit of $44,000. On this example, we have the following return. So the worksheet will populate the remaining available credit balance. So you'll see that $44,000 credit balance from the prior worksheet has populated in field 9 and in the prior worksheet, field 9 displayed that remaining credit balance, and in this worksheet, it displays in field 5 what the remaining credit balance is. So the credit taken for this return, PUT taxes, is $15,000. And in field 9, we have the remaining credit balance of $29,000 that will be carried forward to the next return. So here's additional examples of what the return will look like once you complete the worksheet. In the first image, we have completed the worksheet for the first credit being taken. And after completing the worksheet and returning back to the return, it will display both the credit that's being taken and the remaining balance, the available balance. On the second image, we are on the next return, and that will display what the remaining balance is before you've completed the worksheet. All right, next slide. So on this example, we've essentially included a new incentive payment while you still have a credit balance. So in field 1 and 2, it contains the new incentive payments of $25,000 and $10,000 of administrative cost. Field 3 is calculating the allowable administrative cost to be $2,000, and field 4 is providing the total credit amount of $27,000. What you'll see now is in field 5, we have the available credit balance of $44,000. Field 7 showing the combined credit balance of fields 4 and 5 to give us the credit balance of $71,000. Next slide. So there are some situations where maybe the wrong figure was entered. The system will provide light errors to let you know. So when you're completing the worksheet, field 8 will only allow you to take the available credit balance. You can't go over that amount. And if that does happen, the system will show an error on that field and displays a text box that the figure cannot be greater than then the amount available. And if the worksheet is completed without correcting the error, the return, once you go back to it, will show an error in the credits panel and will prevent the user from going to the next page. So you'll be unable to submit the return until this error has been corrected. So with the Department of Commerce, they'll provide the information of the approved incentives to Department of Revenue. Then Department of Revenue will compare their approved incentive amounts with the credits claimed on the excise tax returns. If there's any discrepancies between the incentives approved by Department of Commerce and the incentives reported on the returns, Department of Revenue will contact the business claiming the credit for any additional information. Also, if a qualified building is served by multiple utility companies, the credit will be apportioned to each utility based on Department of Commerce's calculation. The credit earned in one calendar year can be claimed against taxes during the same calendar year or the following 2 calendar years. The credit cannot be carried backwards. If a claim credit is higher than Department of Commerce approved incentives, the credit must be repaid, including interest. Department of Revenue will issue a balance due notices for this adjustment. Penalties and additional interest may apply if the credit is not paid by the due date of that balance due notice. However, if the public utility company is instructed to pay an amount that is later determined to be abnormal or inaccurate due to no fault of them, the claims for the credit and claims a credit for that amount, they will not have to pay it back. There is no annual tax performance report for this credit program. And the amount of the credit taken and the identity of a business that takes the credit is not considered confidential tax information and is subject to disclosure. And that is it.
All right. Well, Ariel, we do have some time reserved at the end for Q&A. Would it be okay if we held questions for DOR and along with the Q&A here?
I see no issue.
Okay, great. Perfect. Thank you. And then we'll go ahead and move on to wrap us up before we get to that Q&A to Anna Lynn.
Okay, thank you. Next slide. So our team is dedicated to providing outreach, education, and customer support. So this slide just shows some examples of our efforts and services that we provide. Next slide. You know, I just want to tell you about a special project that will launch this summer. Many times have we heard from building owners that not only do they not have funding, but they also don't have the staff to support them in compliance. So thus the Beacon Project was created. The Beacon Project is funded by the Department of Energy. We were awarded $10 million to support building owners and develop the workforce in the clean buildings industry. Next slide. So the Beacon Fellow, we will have, essentially this program will have 60 fellows in a span of 3 years. The Beacon Fellows will kind of be an extension of us. They will be able to provide outreach and education to building owners. Oftentimes we've heard from people that they've never heard of this law. And with the Beacon Fellows, we'll be able to reach more building owners in those hard to reach communities. They'll provide no-cost energy services. They'll be trained to help building owners comply with benchmarking requirements, apply for exemptions, identify energy savings opportunity, help them develop that energy management plan and operations and maintenance program. And just to mention, they are not qualified persons, so they cannot do the extent for tier 1. They can't act as the qualified person for tier 1. But they can help with tier 2 compliance. Many of our focus of communities will be those underserved, overburdened communities. Those are the rural areas, small businesses, small cities, small school districts. You know, our Beacon Fellows will have knowledge of the incentives and grant opportunities that the state offers and the local community offers. you know, how useful are incentives and grants if building owners don't know about them. So having a fellow within the community, being able to support them, provide the information, and help them with the application at no cost. So these fellows, again, 60 fellows over a 3-year period, they will receive pay, benefits, training, certification, support, and mentorship, a lot of work experience and networking. And if you're interested, you can email us at buildings@commerce.wa.gov. When these fellows are serving your customers in your service area, they will reach out to you just to let you know that they are in your community. They're there to serve your customers, and you know, you can definitely work hand in hand with them to support your customers and provide that service in the area. Next slide. So this is just another list of no cost support to you and your customers. You know, you have the Clean Buildings team, and then we have our monthly office hours every Tuesday, every fourth Tuesday of the month. You have to register for that, and the registration could be found on our website. And then we have the Smart Building Center. It provides a Clean Buildings help desk. Some utility providers offer accelerator programs. So if your area of service overlaps with a larger utility that provide that accelerator programs, your customers can register for that. And then Energy Star provides free and on-demand training on benchmarking and the use of Portfolio Manager, which is essentially the energy accounting systems for our benchmarking and our standards. Next slide. So if you scan the QR code, I'll give you a minute, you'll get connected to a QA question and answer. So these are questions and answers for you and your customers, or just to have in your back pocket. So if your customers approach you or your call centers, they can reference this Q&A, or they could just email us directly. We'll share this in the follow-up email with the recording and all the other links that we provided today. Next slide. So how to support your customers. There's so many different ways. These are just suggestions. These are not all mandatory, but you know, becoming a participating utility provider for the incentive program, I mean, one of the biggest ways to support your customers. If you're not participating and your customer would like to apply for the incentive program, then they wouldn't be able to receive those incentives without your participation. Next, develop a process to share energy data. You know, we shared that the utility's role is to share energy data to their customers. You may get it's helpful to just have these instructions readily available to share those to your customers, or to share it with Commerce, to share with the building owners. It's just really helpful to have those canned responses in case you have this influx of inquiries about this. Tell them about the Clean Buildings Performance Standard. We've partnered up with several utilities to send mailers, newsletter, articles, events, webpage. I mean, we've partnered with Lewis County in helping them review their mailer, PSC, and et cetera. So if you would like us to review any kind of mailer just to make sure the message is right, feel free to connect with us. Next slide. So host an informational event just for your customers. We've done this for quite a few utility providers. Our most recent one was Pacific Power in Walla Walla. We've also done like open house, where it's just specifically for the utility providers' customers, and you know, we can provide services, answer questions right then and there. Let us know, connect with us, and we can certainly provide those services to your customers as well. And then offer an accelerator program. Many of the larger utilities have hosted accelerator programs. If you're a smaller utility, I mean, you could do it in a smaller scale. You can connect with these utility providers, the larger ones that are hosting these accelerator programs, through our utility work group, and we'll give you some information on how to join that work group. They meet monthly. So be in the know. Join our utility work group. You know, subscribe to our Clean Building newsletter. and it'll just help you communicate information to your customers about the Clean Buildings Performance Standard. And then, share the free support and resources offered. As you've seen in the slides before, we offer a plethora of educational materials, just support, no-cost support on the different kind of phases and components of the standard. We offer training almost monthly. We do a routine Clean Buildings 101. So a lot of free resources and support for your customers and for you as well. If you want to get up to speed or you have new staff you'd like to train in, we can help you with that. And then support, and lastly, it's, support the Beacon Fellows. Soon we'll have them in certain counties and they will support your customers in that county. We should have a list, come time closer to the summertime. We hope that you could connect with them and then we can get referrals and provide that support. If you want to be a host, or if you have any would like to suggest someone to be recruited as a fellow, please connect with us and we'll provide that information. Next. And here's our Q&A. Back to you, Jeff.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Annalyn. Appreciate that. So, well, thank you, Josette. Thank you, Annalyn. Ariel, thank you very much. That was a very robust and quick presentation, overview of the performance standard, as well as the pieces of the incentive program as well. So thank you all for that. Let's go ahead. We've got roughly 15 minutes for some Q&A, and I'm anticipating some in the Q&A function here. So let's just jump in. I'm going to stop sharing so I can pull all that up. So let's see. One I see still outstanding here in the Q&A is asking if a utility provider provides a BPA energy efficiency incentive, EEI, to a tier 1 or a tier 2, can the utility also claim the public utility tax credit? And I am not sure. That might be something for Josette or.
Yeah, I really don't know the answer to this one. I would love to, if Clint would unmute and we could talk through this one and try and find answer together.
Clint, give me just a second here. I'll bring you in if you don't mind. All right, Clint, if you're able, go ahead.
Okay, this is Clint. Yeah, I'm just curious is if we can basically be an early adopter on this, but also utilize our BPA incentives. In other words, since they're separate program, federal versus state, can we work with the customer to do incentives projects, claim that on Bonneville's BPA incentive, and then turn around and also claim that as a credit on our utility tax? Is there any restriction?
I'm not aware of any restriction. I'll just kind of reiterate that the early adopter incentives are designed to stack with other incentives, right? So building owners have access to really favorable tax credits for building upgrades. They have access to utility rebates and other programs like this BPA program. So those programs are designed to work together to help the building owner, realize their projects at a lower cost. It's really important to lower that initial upfront cost for these retrofits so we can get them done. As far as your utilities tax situation, I really can't speak to that, but I can help you try and find people that could help you answer that question.
I think we did on that we're allowed. It sounds like the intent is we can stack if there's no restrictions preventing us, and that's all I was looking to do is see if we could stack. So we'll look and see if we can do that. Thank you.
Okay, so it sounds like that program would fund some money to the building owner as well. federally then?
I think so.
Yeah, okay, okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Clint. And it looks like you may not be the only one experiencing this, so definitely something we will follow up on for you. So appreciate that. So, I'm seeing a handful of questions that have been answered by our team in the Q&A. So again, thank you to the team for getting to those questions. Certainly, if there are other questions here, we've got some time. Happy to answer those for you. And just know that after today's meeting, we will compile the recording, the slide deck, as well as those questions in the Q&A into a couple different documents and send out to everyone that's on this call and that registered for this webinar. So, and then I believe our email address was also inputted into the chat. Thank you, Robert. So questions come up down the road, feel free to send us an email and we will get those to whether it's our programming or tech team or even our incentives team to be able to answer those as well.
I just want to mention, we would like your feedback on how we can support you better, how we can provide information to you to give to your customers, and how we can partner up with you so that your customers are able to meet compliance with the standard. Any suggestions or feedback would be helpful. If you want us to update that Q&A with a certain question and answer that you had on your mind that other people would have on their minds, or other utility providers, let us know. Again, if you have events or you want to host an event, or if you want to send out a mailer or newsletter article in your space, we can certainly provide you with some information to kind of fill that in. And yeah, just wanted to throw that out. We're here to support you and your customers, the building owners. And just to give you kind of forecasts of future events, soon we will be sending a notification letter for Tier 1 buildings. That's going to come on or before summertime. We will be sharing what it looks like, so you can share it with your customers so that they can just kind of be aware that it's coming. It'll have just the general information about the Clean Buildings Performance Standards, some instructions on how to access the portal and our incentives. So best way to stay in the know is join our utilities work group, and we'll give you the contact to get on that list, and then and sign up for our newsletters. If you go to our website, I don't know if you want to share that, you could sign up. It's to the right column. And, we have tons of resources. It's a lot, I know. We can certainly walk that through for you, and we can point you to the right part of the website for the specific information that you're looking for yourself or for your customers. So, yeah.
Right.
Hi, Jeff. I had one question come
please.
in from a utility, and I think this is a question for the Department of Revenue, and I don't know if they're going to be able to answer this, but I just want to throw it out there and see if someone's got an answer. So a utilities tax team has this question: will there be a letter with a reference number that will be given to us through the portal or otherwise once the final tax credit is authorized? Is that, I'm not familiar with the DOR process and this letter with a reference number they're referring to. So I was just putting out there to see if anyone knows the answer.
Sure. Oh,
Jessica, we can't
Yeah.
hear you. I'm sorry. Like, you're very faint.
I'll mute myself.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay. So this credit is unlike other credits which require an application process, and then you end up with a letter letting you know what the approved amount is. When you fill out that credit worksheet, it calculates the credit for you. So there's no letter needed to tell you what the approved amount is because you fill that out and you can take the credit within the return. So it's all a pretty integral process. Hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, I understand that. So I'll just say it's not like other credits where you apply, just fill out the form and it calculates it for you and there's no letter.
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Jessica. Oh. Okay. Well, this has been a great presentation, and again, appreciate everyone for joining us today. Just reiterate that once we compile all this together, the recording, the Q&A, as well as the slide deck, we'll get that sent out to everyone. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, so I'll put out a call one more time for any questions that we can answer for you while we're here. The next webinar we have coming up is on December 20th, which is developing the EUI for Tier 1 and Tier 2 buildings. And I'll see if Robert can put a link in the chat for us on that one for the registration. And then Annalyn did mention our Clean Building Performance Standard office hours. That is coming up on the 4th Tuesday of every month. That's just another opportunity to connect with our Clean Buildings team. We always have someone from our tech team, incentives team, programming team here available, and it's an opportunity just to walk through different scenarios, ask questions specifically about the building owner or their staff or utility providers have in regards to going through the performance standard process. So it's a great opportunity, and certainly encourage anyone to join us on those regular sessions. Perfect. Thank you, Robert, for putting that in. And if we can add office hours as well, that would be fantastic. And while he's doing that, just one more call for questions.
Can I ask a question to the utilities?
Yes.
I don't know if anyone can unmute or just give some quick feedback. How are you guys envisioning the payment process to your building owners? What does that look like?
Yeah, if you got feedback, I would say raise that virtual hand and we'll bring you forward here.
Jeff, this is Clint. You already gave me permission earlier, so I'll take advantage of it.
There you go.
And we would envision utilizing the same payment process we currently have through our BPA and in energy efficiency incentive programs. So we are accustomed to paying customers, reimbursing them for energy efficiency programs, and I see it being paid the same way through this program.
Is that like through their utility bill, or how do you do that?
We do it separately. We through our finance department, and it's a separate process.
And about how long does that take?
Way too long compared to their expectations, but pretty quick when we have to get all the verifications done on our side for energy efficiency programs.
Thanks, that's helpful.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Clint. So, and again, if anyone else has some feedback they'd like to share today, just raise that virtual hand. I can bring you forward. Okay. All right, seeing none, we are at the 12 o'clock time frame. So again, thank you to everyone that joined us today. Really appreciate it. Shout out to the Clean Buildings team and DOR, Jessica and Ariel, for joining us as well to present this information. We hope you found it valuable. As questions do come up, please reach out to us. Again, this is a partnership in so many different ways. So We want to hear from you and work alongside with you through this process. So again, thank you for this. Thank you for joining, and we will be connecting again soon. Have a great day, everyone.